My friends, it is a strange and sobering thing to consider that the very people we promise to love most deeply are often the ones we wound most fiercely. We enter love with the bright banners of devotion, but soon the banners fray, and the very home meant to be a sanctuary becomes a battlefield. Now, why is that? Why do couples, who once spoke with gentleness, so quickly turn to war? It is not because love has failed, but because our hearts are restless, proud, and so very eager to be right. We think of victory over one another, when in truth, the only victory that matters is over ourselves. Today, I do not come to scold you, but to remind you, the war can cease. There is a deeper peace available than the one that comes from winning an argument. It is a peace born of humility, patience, and the quiet strength to listen before we speak. Let us look at why these battles rage, and more importantly, how the war might finally end. Pride turns love into a battlefield long before words become weapons. It begins so quietly that we hardly notice it. Two people who once delighted in each other start to hold their own ground as if they were nations at war, and the strange thing is that it is not a war about big things at first. It is about the small, the ordinary, the petty details of life. How something was said, how a gesture was taken, how a tone felt like an insult. Pride enters like a whisper, telling each heart, "You must be seen, you must be heard, you must not be small." And so, instead of love, we start to defend ourselves. When pride stands at the door of the heart, it has no interest in the truth of the matter. It only wishes to win. It twists love into a contest. What once was a relationship of us slowly becomes a game of me against you. It convinces us that to admit a wrong is to be diminished, that to listen is to surrender, and that to apologize is to lose the ground we stand on. What a tragic lie that is, for love does not ask to win. Love asks to yield, and it asks to yield not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to put the other above ourselves. Yet pride sees that very act as a kind of death, and so it resists. You see, the quarrels that couples fight rarely begin with words. By the time the words are thrown, the real fight has already begun inside. Pride has drawn its lines long before, deep in the heart where the other cannot see. It builds a fortress. It stores up past wrongs like weapons, ready to be used at the slightest provocation. It refuses to see the face of the beloved as the same one that once gave us joy. It reduces that face to an opponent. The saddest part is that pride always pretends to be our protector. It tells us, if you give in, you will be walked over. And so, two people stand tall and unbending, like soldiers in a field, never realizing that the field they are destroying is their own home. They will not say, "I am sorry," because to say it feels like to lose. They will not say, "I understand," because understanding requires stepping outside oneself. And as pride digs in, the love that once was warm grows cold, not from hatred but from neglect. But if we could pause long enough to see what is really happening, we would notice that every time pride wins, the relationship loses. When I must be right, I make you wrong, and there is no room left for tenderness. When I must stand taller, I push you down, and there is no space left for trust. When I must have the last word, I silence you, and in silencing you, I silence the voice of love itself. And all of this is done without a single blow, long before we even realize a war has begun. There is, however, a better way, and it begins with the smallest, humblest act, the refusal to let pride be our master. It begins with the courage to see the beloved not as an enemy, but as one who is also wounded, who also fears being small. It begins with a willingness to say, "I do not need to win here, because if I win and you lose, we both lose." It is the opposite of what pride whispers to us, and yet it is the very thing that saves love. If you think carefully, you will see that the happiest couples are not those who never argue. They are those who have learned that a moment of humility is stronger than 1,000 moments of pride. They know that it is not weakness to bend, but strength. They understand that a single gentle word, offered when the heart is tempted to defend itself, can dissolve anger before it hardens. They understand that the real victory is not over each other, but over the self that insists on having its own way. When pride listening with humility disarms anger more swiftly than winning an argument ever will. To listen in this way is not merely to hear words with your ears, but to open the doors of the heart so that another person may enter without fear. Most of us believe we are listening when, in truth, we are simply waiting for our turn to speak. We are not so much hearing as we are preparing our next reply, our next defense, our next proof that we are right. This is why so many conversations between couples become like two ships firing at each other in the dark, each so busy loading their cannons that they do not even notice the other ship is sinking. Humility changes everything about how we listen. It slows us down. It asks, do you care more about being understood or about understanding? That is a hard question because pride always prefers the first. We want to be heard, acknowledged, and justified, but rarely do we want to pause long enough to allow the other person that same gift. The paradox is that the moment one person truly listens, without preparing a counterattack, the other person feels seen, and that feeling alone can drain the poison from anger. Think about the last time someone listened to you, really listened. They did not interrupt. They did not roll their eyes or fold their arms. They did not hurry you along so they could speak. They just sat there, still, patient, receiving your words as though they were important. Do you remember how that felt? Something softened in you. Something let go. You felt that even if they disagreed with you, at least they cared enough to understand. That is the kind of listening humility makes possible in a relationship, and it is far more powerful than clever arguments or sharp comebacks. Arguments feed on the need to be right, but when humility enters the room, it removes that fuel. Anger is like a flame, and when we pour more words of self-defense upon it, it burns hotter. But when someone listens with no agenda, it is like removing the oxygen. The flame flickers, hesitates, and begins to die. It is not defeated by force. It is calmed by understanding. Listening like this requires courage because it means lowering the walls you have built around yourself. It means risking the possibility that you may discover you were wrong or that the other person's pain is valid. But what is the alternative? To go on in circles, talking over each other until both of you are exhausted and nothing is resolved. Humility offers a different path. It is the willingness to say, I will hear you even if I do not like what I hear. I will hear you because you matter more to me than my comfort does. Forgiveness is not a truce. It is the only soil in which love can grow again. A truce is an agreement to stop fighting for a while. It is a pause between battles, a silent promise that the next argument will begin again as soon as the silence has grown unbearable. But forgiveness is of a different nature. It is not a pause. It is a new beginning. It asks for something deeper than a ceasefire. It asks for surrender, not of one another, but of the anger and the bitterness we have been holding as if they were weapons. Many couples make the mistake of thinking that peace comes when they no longer talk about what hurt them. They sweep it under the rug and carry on as though forgetting will make the wound heal. But unspoken wounds do not heal. They fester. They lie in wait, hidden, and at the smallest provocation, they rise again with renewed strength. This is why a truce can never save a relationship. Only forgiveness has the power to remove the poison entirely. Forgiveness, however, is not easy. It requires a death of something in us, the need to be repaid, the need to hold power over the one who hurt us, the desire to see them pay for what they did. This is why forgiveness often feels impossible. Yet, in truth, forgiveness is not a favor we grant to the other person. It is a liberation we grant to ourselves. When we forgive, we are saying, I will not allow this wrong to own me any longer. I will not let my heart be chained to what happened. You may think forgiveness means pretending that the hurt never happened. It does not. Forgiveness does not erase the past. It simply refuses to let the past dictate the future. It sees the wound with clear eyes and yet chooses not to strike back. It does not deny that there was pain. It acknowledges it fully and still chooses to love. That is why forgiveness is so powerful. It breaks the cycle of retaliation. It stops the war that pride insists must go on. In love, forgiveness must be constant, for there is no relationship without injury. True imperfect peace in a relationship is not found by avoiding conflict, but by learning to fight for each other, not against each other. Many people imagine that a good relationship is one in which no disagreements ever occur, where two hearts always beat in perfect rhythm and never clash. Yet anyone who has lived even a little while knows this is not true. To join your life with another is to bring together two histories, two temperaments, two sets of fears and hopes. Sooner or later, there will be friction, and it is not the friction itself that destroys love, but the way we handle it. Avoiding conflict does not create harmony, it creates distance. When two people are afraid to speak what is truly on their hearts, resentment begins to grow in the shadows. Smiles become masks, and politeness becomes a wall behind which hurt feelings gather like a rising flood. And when at last that flood breaks, it is far more destructive than if the truth had been spoken earlier with honesty and care. Peace is not the absence of tension. Peace is the presence of trust that allows even hard words to be spoken in love. True peace comes when a couple decides that they will not use their strength against each other, but for each other. There is a great difference between fighting to win and fighting to heal. The one who fights to win sharpens every word like a blade, thinking only of victory. The one who fights to heal listens even in anger, searches for what the other person truly needs beneath their frustration, and refuses to see them as an enemy. It is a deliberate choice, made over and over again, to put the bond above the battle. This way of fighting does not come naturally, because everything in us wants to defend ourselves. When we feel accused, we raise our shields. When we feel cornered, we strike. It takes courage to lay down these weapons and say instead, "I am for you. Even if I disagree, even if I feel hurt, I am still on your side." Those simple words have the power to change the entire direction of a quarrel. For when your beloved is reminded that you are not trying to crush them, but to understand them, the war inside them quiets as well. Think for a moment of all the battles couples wage: money, family, expectations, unspoken disappointments. If you look beneath the surface of these arguments, you will often find a fear, a longing, or a hurt that has not been acknowledged. And when we attack the surface issue without tending to the heart beneath it, we keep fighting the wrong war. Fighting for each other means listening for that deeper truth. It means asking, even in the heat of anger, "What is it you are really trying to tell me? What pain lies beneath these words?" That kind of question is an act of love, because it looks past the anger and into the heart. The irony is that when two people learn to fight like this, for the good of the relationship instead of the ego, conflict ceases to be something to fear. It becomes a doorway. Through it, the relationship grows stronger, more honest, more alive. For every storm weathered together proves that the bond is greater than the winds that try to tear it apart. Couples who practice this do not dream of a life without disagreements. They dream of a life where even the disagreements draw them closer. And so, peace is not a fragile glass that must be protected from every harsh word. It is more like a living tree whose roots grow deeper with each storm. It becomes steady and strong because it has learned to bend without breaking. This kind of peace cannot be made by silence or avoidance. It is forged in the fire of learning how to argue with kindness, how to apologize without delay, how to listen even when every part of you wants to shout. If only we could remember, in the very moment of anger, that the person before us is not an adversary but a companion, how different our words would be. We would see that the only battle worth winning is the battle to protect that bond. And if we can learn to make that our goal, to fight for each other and never against each other, then conflict will no longer be a war. It will become a way of finding our way back to one another again and again, for as long as love lasts. And so, my friends, we come to the heart of the matter. The quarrels that break a home are not born of great evils, but of small ones. Pride that will not bend, ears that will not listen, hearts that will not forgive, and the mistaken belief that peace is found in silence rather than in learning to love even when it is hardest to do so. If you wish to end the war in your home, you must first end the war within yourself. Choose to lay down the need to be right. Choose to listen as though the other's words were a map to their heart. Choose forgiveness not as a truce, but as the rich soil where love may bloom again. And when the storms come, and they will choose to fight, not against the one beside you, but with them, for the bond that holds you both. This is not easy. It asks for a strength that is gentler than force and braver than stubbornness. But here is the miracle: when two people dare to love like this, the battlefield is transformed. The home becomes a refuge, the anger becomes understanding, and the war that once raged between two hearts becomes, in time, the very place where those same hearts learn how to beat in harmony once more. May you have the courage to begin this work today, not tomorrow, not when the other changes first, but now. For love, as you once dreamed of it, is still possible. It waits only for the pride to be silent, the ears to be open, and the heart to choose peace.